Every Thursday night, Beatrice Darkle hosted a church group for older women in her cherished Queen Anne Victorian home. Beatrice was a wealthy woman who spared no expense to keep the home in good repair, with biannual fresh coat of powder puff pink paint with daisy white petal trim. She also kept the inside spotless and took great care to keep her antique furniture looking new. She lived alone, therefore was happy to have the fellowship that the group provided. She sat in the front parlor with the ladies from the group, sipping tea and eating crumpets smeared with jam. They always sat in the front parlor because the ladies loved how the Tiffany lamps cast kaleidoscope rays of light onto the Gothic Chippendale furniture. They were all old enough to still have an appreciation for the feel of more genteel times, and the parlor in Beatrice Darkle's lovely Victorian was the perfect setting for relaxed conversation. "This jam is devilishly delicious," Lillian gravely said. She had already eaten 3 crumpets lathered with the ruby-colored preserves. Crumbs had fallen onto the front of her dress. "It's difficult for me to determine exactly what this flavor is." Beatrice was a plump woman with a cherubic smile which spread across her face due to the pride in her jam. "It's my own special recipe," she replied. "It's cherry with just a hint of jalapeno." Clara Vane was thin and tall and rigid and wore a pair of cat-eye reading glasses that usually dangled on a chain around her neck until they were needed. She dabbed at a smear of jam on her lips and said, "This is such an unusual combination, Beatrice dear. Uniquely sweet and spicy." "You just have to share the recipe with us," Gertrude Gloom added. Gertrude had just celebrated her 67th birthday, and the other ladies would gossip about her behind her back because she tried to dress as if she were decades younger. The fact that she worked to stay in shape and good health at her age didn't necessarily mean that she could pull off wearing the tight-fitting pants and blouse that she was wearing now. Beatrice beamed. "Of course I'll share with you ladies. Any of you who want it." She turned her attention to Henrietta Poppet. Henrietta was only a year older than Gertrude, but looked a decade younger with smooth, dark skin and a radiant smile. "You haven't had but one bite of the jam, Henrietta. Do you not like it?" "I'm so sorry, Bee, but I'm afraid I'm not a jalapeno kind of woman." Henrietta was smearing jam from a different jar onto a crumpet. "But this raspberry jam is more to my taste. I have to say it's possibly the best I've ever had. And if I didn't know any better, I think that you were not a teacher before you retired, but instead were a world-class pastry chef." Francesca Fantasma was the youngest in the group. She had once been a fashion model back in Italy before marrying a wealthy luthier and moving to Nevermore Hollows. Even at the age of 60, she was still gorgeous and had a smoldering confidence that radiated from her. She wore her raven hair long and her lips painted red. "I would second that sentiment. I've traveled the world and I've never tasted better." "Well, thank you, my dear friends," Beatrice said. "Well, as you know, we're not here to lavish me with praise about my pastry skills. We're here to move our ministry along. So, Gertrude, could you please read the agenda for us?" "I'd be happy to," Gertrude replied. She slid her glasses on and read from a notepad. "Let's see. Today we're discussing founding an after-school program for middle schoolers and also how to deal with the homeless here in Nevermore Hollows." She turned to Beatrice. "The floor is yours." "Well, thank you," Beatrice replied. "As you know, I spent 30 years as a middle school teacher, and during that time I saw a drastic increase in narcissism, depression, and overt sexuality in the students at levels never seen before in the history of mankind. The kids today are becoming less engaged and more jaded and cynical, but there's more work that can be done, and I would like to speak with Principal Pride at Craven Middle School and see if he will let our church start an after-school club. Well, that's going to be a bold ask, Clara said. It may be true that the tainting of young souls has become more rampant, but even if you could convince Principal Pride to let us start a Satanist after-school club, there would be a lot of resistance from the community. The world may be going to hell, but there's still enough righteousness in this town to be troublesome for us. But it wouldn't be satanic, Beatrice countered. We belong to the Church of the Profane Goat, dear, not the Church of Satan. Clara gave a derisive snort. It's the same thing, Bee. We may worship the profane goat, but even he answers to Satan, who is the king of hell, and there's no way we would get approval to do this. Beatrice knew that Clara was right on this matter. Oh, I suppose so. The world has slipped so far, yet not far enough that we can be as bold as we'd like in warping the minds of the youth. She motioned at Gertrude. What was next on the agenda? Before Gertrude could answer, Clara interjected another comment. I want to circle back on one of last month's agenda items, specifically Francesca's initiative on how we can increase divorce rates in town. How is everyone doing on that? Francesca gave a throaty giggle that still had the power to spike lust in the hearts of men of any age. Oh, it's clear our efforts are working. I spoke with an attorney friend who told me that he has seen a 10% increase in divorce filings over the same time frame last year. She leaned forward, allowing her ample cleavage to nearly burst from her low-cut blouse. And I know I've been the cause of two. Beatrice gave Francesca a sly look. Well, don't hold out on us, honey. How did you accomplish that, you minx? Francesca gave a flick of her raven hair and said, Well, let's just say Jimmy Ratcliffe has a thing for cougars, and his wife just may have gotten an anonymous text of a video of him leaving my house with a very happy smile on his face. The ladies all laughed, and Henrietta said, Francesca, dear, it would seem you never grew out of your hoe phase. Francesca feigned a lack of understanding. Being a hoe should never be a phase, darling. It should be a constant way of life. Clara feigned exasperation toward her slutty friend. Well, the rest of us each caused a filing over the past few weeks with the boring old weapon of gossip. It shocks me how often a racy story about infidelity works to disrupt marriages, and it works more often than not, even if it's not true. Now, go on, Gertrude. What's next? How we can do something to lower the homeless population in town, Gertrude replied. Though homelessness isn't that much of a problem here in Nevermore Hollows, Henrietta and Lillian would like to discuss their solution to address what little we have. Henrietta and Lillian were sisters. They shared the same dad, but different mothers. Their dad had been a black blues musician who had played with Muddy Waters, and their mothers were both groupies. Henrietta's mother was black, and Lillian's was white. Henrietta set her tea down on the table. At last count, there were 22 homeless men and 5 homeless women around town. That is up 5% from the first of the year. And some of the business owners here in town, led by that horrible biker, Ed McQueen, are providing help in treating addiction and teaching them job skills. But the other night, Lillian and I were discussing what we could do, and Lillian had the perfect idea. Though Lillian's father had been black, she had milky white skin and bright blue eyes, which she'd gotten from her mother. She beamed at the opportunity to present her solution and said, "I say we eat them." The other women all gave responses of surprise. "Oh, my," Gertrude said, her hand to her chest, as if she were clutching her pearls in shock. "What a bold solution! I love it." Clara gave a happy little clap of her hands. "Yes, and we don't get to eat long pig as much as we'd like." "We could get Mama Glory and her daughters to help us cook them up," Henrietta said. Mama Glory was a local businesswoman who sold barbecue spices and sauces around the world from her store on Main Street. What the ladies in the group knew that most people did not was that Mama Glory was also a cannibal. "Each homeless person we slaughter," Henrietta said, "we could get Mama Glory to cook them up with different spices for us, and the way she cooks them in the ground like a normal pig makes the meat so tender and juicy." Lillian beamed at the fact that the other ladies were on board. "The homeless population dwindles, and we get to savor the delicacy of long pig," she said. "It's a win on all accounts." Beatrice, being the leader of the group, said, "Well, it seems we are all in agreement, so how do you suggest we begin?" Henrietta and Lillian gave each other sly looks. Then Henrietta turned to the group and said, "Well, this will be easy. We decide on which homeless person we want to eat, convince them we're going to give them a good meal, and then we just slaughter them." "And I say we start tonight," Lillian said. "On the way over, we saw a couple of tasty choices living in a tent down by Savini Lake, and both are female, and one is quite plump." Henrietta was beaming as well. "And in anticipation that you ladies would be on board, we brought a selection of weapons that we can use. We have knives, axes, even a hammer for you, dear Clara. We know how much you like to use a hammer when you murder." Beatrice checked the clock on the wall. "Twilight will be up on us in about 30 minutes. That gives us time to give Mama Gloria a call and let her know that we'll be providing supper tonight, if she's willing to help us do the slaughtering and the cooking." "Oh, we've already taken care of that," Henrietta said. "Yeah, we were pretty confident you ladies would agree to this," Lillian said. "So we called her earlier today and asked, and she told us she'd have a pit ready. We just need to bring the meat." There was a moment when the ladies each considered the treat that they were about to share. Not just the treat of eating, but also the treat of murder. Beatrice was the first to break their reverie. "Well then, let's get to it, ladies." The ladies put away the jams, washed the teacups, and retrieved their purses and exited the house. They climbed into Lillian's 1957 DeSoto station wagon, which was painted tamarack green and trimmed in white. After buckling themselves in, they backed out of the driveway and headed toward Savini Lake, where, by the act of murder and eventual slaughter, they would begin their ministry of reducing the homeless population, which would also provide a decadent delicacy for their supper.